Bring on Billy Embody on 3. Chat a little LSU spring football. Billy, thanks for the time. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing very well. I just talked about Will Campbell in the last segment, and the reason is because Brian Kelly gave such a great soundbite about him, about the fact that he's been the domino that has lined everything up on the offensive front, and about his maturity and whatnot. On the flip side of things, his talk about the quarterbacks was absolutely nothing. There's just nothing to it at all. So you've been out to practice, you've seen some of the video, you've talked to some players. What do you know about what's going on with the quarterbacks this spring?
Yeah, I think it is going to start trending toward, reps being dished out according to how the coaches feel like the guys are performing. And that's what at least Brian Kelly said. So that was probably the biggest thing to take away is that maybe now we'll start seeing, especially with Saturday's open practice start to finish, a little bit more of who really is separating or who's really impressing. Because when you break it down, I mean, Walker Howard ended practice on Saturday with a great throw down the field to Kyron Lacy. It was a dime, but at the same time, I don't think Walker Howard's going to be the guy trotting out there game one as your starting quarterback in all likelihood. That's probably going to be a Jaden Daniels, Miles Brennan, or Garrett Nussmeier. So do you start, dishing out snaps to those guys accordingly? And do we see a little bit more separation with that group as far as the snaps being dished out? And I think Jaden Daniels and Miles Brennan, if you're a betting man, are probably the guys that are going to be, in that true running to start. Garrett Nussmeier, can make some really good throws. He's got some experience after last year, but when you have those two veterans, kind of on the roster as well, just the odds are going to favor those guys from what it seems like, at least early on. I would still lean a little bit toward Jaden Daniels taking that starting job. He's got that ability to extend plays, and as the offensive line is still worked out, and probably will be a little bit of a work in progress just from a chemistry standpoint early in the season, his ability to extend plays and take off and run really stands out to me. I think you're going to want a little bit more consistency from him as a passer. And same goes for any of these guys. When we got a chance to watch a little bit of practice, I think the consistency, especially when they were doing drills to simulate pressure or when they were under pressure in general, it seemed like you wanted to see a little bit more consistent accuracy from those guys. And so if that's an issue, Jaden Daniels is probably the guy to best handle that because he can just tuck it and maybe not force things and take off and extend plays and run.
I had a bunch of follow-up questions there, and you continued to talk and kind of answer all of them, but I'll go back to one thing that you said. I was curious to hear your thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier. You said the odds had shifted. What kind of odds would you give him to be the starting quarterback?
If you're breaking it down, I would say it's probably greater than 50% that Jaden Daniels gets to start. And if that's the case, Miles Brennan is probably at 30 and then Garrett Nussmeier is probably at 20, just kind of rough, odd percentages there. And again, that's just kind of more so when you have two of those veterans right now on the roster. He's still a young quarterback. He has all of his, years available to play. He's got 4 years left to play after redshirting last year. I just think the odds are probably more so tilted towards Jaden Daniels and Miles Brennan. And I don't think that's a shot at, Nuss's long-term ability to start and be a, really solid starting quarterback at the college level. I just feel like right now he's probably just on the outside of those chances to really start and take the first snaps against Florida State.
We saw the LSU defense last season kind of be the tale of two halves early on in the season, really not being able to stop anyone, and later half in the season really play some dominant football. Getting a look at the defense this spring, what side do you think is going to show up for the 2022 season? That defense we saw early on in the year, or kind of that defense we saw in the latter half?
I do think the scheme will help in a huge way. Matt House has that ability to dial up what is necessary for the personnel that he has. I'm kind of leaning towards the defense, building off of what they did late in the year and being able to, really help this team and give them a chance to win some football games. And I think that's the product of returning a lot of players in a way off that front seven. You do lose Damone Clark, but at the same time, you get guys like Mason Smith back with another year, B.J. Ojolari, Ali Gay, Makai Wingo entering the fold. Greg Penn has looked good at practice so far. Mike Jones Jr. looks a little bit more comfortable And then if that secondary, which now, I mean, they've already got a lot of vets back there, even if they are new to LSU, and they probably aren't done adding in that secondary. If that can just all kind of come together, and then you work in the scheme and how maybe it might be a little bit better, just as far as the players buying in. That was something that kind of stood out when talking with Savion Jones on Saturday. Is that the scheme just might be a little bit better, and they might be a little bit more confident in that scheme. I think you're going to see a defense that is going to build off the confidence it had late in the year, and I think they're going to be, honestly, they've got a chance to really be the calling card of this team.
Billy Embody on 3 Sports, our guest here on Hunt and Hill. Billy, in our line of work, you get questions about the 5 stars more so than anything else. Where does Sage Ryan fit into this equation?
Yeah, right now he's sitting at nickel, and it sounds like he's behind Greg Brooks, who's had a really, really impressive start to his LSU career, at least in spring ball. But Greg at least told us that he's probably going to play a little bit more outside when it comes down to it. He'll get some opportunities on the outside corner spots, which would allow Sage, if he can be healthy, to step up and be at that nickel spot. And if he's healthy, I mean, he's got a chance to be a really good player and somebody that takes that nickelback spot for the next few years. I mean, honestly, he's that talented. We know what he did at LCA on both sides of the ball and playing all sorts of different positions. Now that he's settled into that nickelback spot, if he can stay healthy, he's got a chance to really be a good player and a big contributor this year.
Receiver room really stacked, getting a lot of love going into this next season, but with no Kayshon Boutte all throughout this spring. Has there been a guy that's kind of stepped up? I know Jack Bech getting a lot of love, Malik Neighbors. Is there anyone having that just really breakout spring that they could possibly be like a number 1A to Kayshon Boutte?
I really think it's Malik Neighbors. Jack Bech has been out a little bit, but the way Malik is, as far as his competitiveness and his abilities on the field in general, that's a really good combination. That's something that, we got a chance to listen to Cortez Hankton speak at the coaches clinic on Friday. And that's something he really hammered home, whether it was blocking drills, whether it was, their route running and competitiveness in competitive plays. It did seem like, Malik Neighbors popped up on that film a little bit when he was coaching talking with the coaches. And so I'm going to, at least peg Malik Neighbors as that guy that can be that true number 2. I think he's explosive. I think he's got the ability. And with Kayshon Boutte taking a lot of the looks from defenses as far as maybe some help over the top, that could lead to Malik Neighbors getting some shots down the field as well.
All right, we spent a lot of time on the offensive line in the last segment, but I do want to round back to that as we close things up with you. How surprised are you that Will Campbell has earned that spot right now at left tackle, and what does that mean for Dellinger and for Wire and some of those other guys?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised it took, just the halfway point for them to stick him out there and be so comfortable, but it made sense after Brian Kelly, said that he's just such a mature kid. He can kind of take the lumps that, sometimes a left tackle will take, going against those elite pass rushers. And, one that is a true freshman will, might get down on himself a little bit as far as, his confidence. But he said that Will Campbell hasn't really showed any of that. And so with that, ability to kind of move past, some of these bumps in the road, it doesn't sound like it's too surprising to a lot of people at LSU. I think Cam Wire, being able to stay healthy is a big key to, his future at LSU. They've got Marcus Dumerville battling with him out there on the edge. Garrett Dellinger has been out for the spring, and I think he'll factor in more so maybe in the interior. But I am just a little surprised as far as Will Campbell being stuck out there at left tackle at that starting spot so early on. I'm not too surprised just as far as, his ability to, eventually start, but to throw him out there as a true freshman left tackle, I mean, that's going to be one of the key questions for LSU is when the lights do come on, how well he can perform will be very, very important to protecting whoever is back there at quarterback and probably the offense's success overall.
It was basically, and last one, Billy Embody, our guest here from 1-3 Sports, to put this signing class together in the late period was basically Brian Kelly, Polian, and Frank Wilson. Like, that was basically all that was there. Now the staff has been put together, kind of got their feet on the ground. Any reports on how the recruiting efforts, relationship building is going very early on?
Yeah, I think this is the start of what could be a program that gets a little hot on the recruiting trail. It seems like there's some defensive backs that are having LSU right at the top of their list with some decisions coming up. I think the summer will be more so of a time where LSU could move into that double-digit commitment range and, really start to tee themselves up to be able to be selective down the stretch ahead of the early signing period of December. But overall, they've been really selective with who they brought on campus as far as these unofficial visits. It seems like it's 1-2 guys a position at a time, and the weekends don't get too big, which I think is going to help with a lot of these guys wanting to get back to campus and get that official visit with the staff and get a closer look, just because they've been treated with a high level of priority as far as when they've been on campus instead of it being a cattle call. And I honestly think I think there's Brian Polian that even called it that, which in the past we've seen some of that just across the country at different programs, hundreds of prospects coming in for spring practices, but LSU's been pretty selective, which is a smart move on their part.
Really tell them where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, you can check us out at thebengaltiger.com. A lot of recruit reactions rolling in there, as well as continued spring coverage.
Thanks, Billy.
Appreciate it, guys.
He is Billy Embody on 3 Sports.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.